station was flying
That's 1.5 meters.
We copy.
And as mentioned earlier, European Space Agency astronaut Sophie Adano is monitoring today's operation from the space station's cupola. She's going to continue to monitor as the spacecraft continues to back away from the International Space Station. We heard call outs for proceeding with back away as well as back away in progress, and that basically means that ground teams began the commanding for the spacecraft to back away, and then the back away began, and we're seeing good views here of that separation.
Vehicle clearance, approximately 4.5 meters.
We copy. Thank you.
Great call outs there as the vehicle continues to back away. This is Mission Control Houston as we continue joint operations.
Release commanded.
And we heard a great call out there. Release was commanded of the Cygnus XL cargo spacecraft this morning at 6:05 a.m. Central, 7:05 a.m. Eastern. As we continue joint operations between NASA and Northrop Grumman's team at their facility in Dulles, Virginia.
Okay, so performing step 4 of procedure 1.602.
We concur.
You just heard that call out for back away complete, and we are standing by for the departure burn. Once again, Cygnus was successfully released from the International Space Station's robotic arm at 6:06 a.m. Central, 7:06 a.m. Eastern. At the time of release, the space station was flying over the South Atlantic. So as mentioned, we are standing by for that departure burn. The departure burn is a 6-minute and 40-second departure burn, and it'll place the spacecraft in a 24-hour safe trajectory away from the International Space Station.
Depart commanded.
As mentioned, we are standing by for the Keep Out Sphere exit. There are two boundaries around the International Space Station. The first is called the Keep Out Sphere, which is like in the neighborhood of the space station. So once Cygnus passes the Keep Out Sphere, it then travels further out and passes the approach ellipsoid. This is ultimately will set the cargo spacecraft on its 24-hour safe trajectory. These boundaries are safety boundaries that require go, no-go polls. and they're used in the unlikely event that something goes wrong with the Cygnus spacecraft as it departs. The first zone that I mentioned, called the Keep Out Sphere, it's a zone that consists of an imaginary sphere around the space station with a radius of 200 meters. And then the second zone, a little bit further out, called the Approach Ellipsoid, is an imaginary shape measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers. Essentially, think of it as a large three-dimensional oval. These boundaries are just another chance to confirm that all of the guidance, navigation, and control systems are working correctly on Cygnus as it continues to move away from the space station. If you are just joining us, we are coming to you live from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. We are here to continue our coverage of Northrop Grumman's 23rd commercial resupply services for NASA to the space station. The Cygnus XL cargo spacecraft, named the SS William Willie McCool, is Northrop Grumman's 22nd commercial resupply services mission to the space station. Following a 175-day stay, the cargo spacecraft departed the space station this morning at 6:06 a.m. Central, 7:06 a.m. Eastern, as the station was flying 260 miles above the South Atlantic. The spacecraft in a 24-hour safe trajectory away from the International Space Station.
Depart commended.
And we copy. Cygnus departure burn is in progress. Monitor departure burn, step 5 in 1 decimal.
In 1 decimal 602.
Great callouts as well as views that we're seeing right here. The departure burn is underway. As mentioned, it will last about 6 minutes and 40 seconds. This departure burn continues to move the spacecraft further away from the space station, which is currently just a little over 18 meters away. During the departure burn, we will hear a keep out sphere exit, so we are standing by for that call out. As mentioned, we are standing by for the keep out sphere exit. There are two boundaries around the International Space Station. The first is called the keep out sphere, which is like in the neighborhood of the space station. So once Cygnus passes the keep out sphere, it then travels further out and passes the approach ellipsoid. This is ultimately will set the cargo spacecraft on its 24-hour safe trajectory. These boundaries are safety boundaries that require go, no-go polls, and they're used in the unlikely event that something goes wrong with the Cygnus spacecraft as it departs. The first zone that I mentioned, called the Keep Out Sphere, it's a zone that consists of an imaginary sphere around the space station with a radius of 200 meters. And then the second zone, a little bit further out, called the approach ellipsoid, is an imaginary shape measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers. Essentially, think of it as a large three-dimensional oval. These boundaries are just another chance to confirm that all of the guidance, navigation, and control systems are working correctly on Cygnus as it continues to move away from the space station. If you are just joining us, we are coming to you live from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. We are here to continue our coverage of Northrop Grumman's 23rd commercial resupply services for NASA to the space station. The Cygnus XL cargo spacecraft, named the SS William Willie McCool, is Northrop Grumman's 22nd commercial resupply services mission to the space station. Following a 175-day stay, the cargo spacecraft departed the space station this morning at 6:06 a.m. Central, 7:06 a.m. Eastern, as the station was flying 260 miles above the South Atlantic.
The station step 6 complete.
And Sophie, yes, departure burn is complete, and in fact, Cygnus has exited the 200-meter keep-out sphere. And from all of us here in Houston and our partners at Northrop Grumman and our robotics team in Montreal, we want to thank you for your assistance with the departure today. We also want to thank Cygnus as it drifts back to Earth for a job well done. This extra-large format vehicle brought aboard thousands of pounds of science and supplies, and perhaps most importantly for you folks, snacks. Missions like this don't happen without the dedication and teamwork of so many people across NASA and our partners, and that spirit of cooperation and excellence was captured in the very name of this vehicle, the SS Commander William McCool, someone who embodied those same values every day. Thanks for your help today, Sophie.
Thank you to everyone on the ground in Canada, in the U.S., and everywhere all over the world for making this beautiful event happen. It's magic to see and to witness how technology and science, what we can do with all of this. It's very beautiful from here. I'm going to hand over the mic to Jack. He has a few words to say.
Houston, and thanks, Sophie. Good morning, everyone. I'm U.S. Navy Captain and NASA astronaut Jack Hathaway, a member of Expedition 74 on board the International Space Station. While astronauts serve long-duration missions, resupply and cargo vehicles bring new science experiments, critical hardware to carry out our mission, and care packages from our families. Leaving us today is a Cygnus cargo vehicle that carries with it a tradition of naming the spacecraft to honor someone special. This Cygnus is named in honor of Captain Willie McCool, a NASA astronaut, a naval aviator who was serving as pilot of the Space Shuttle Columbia on STS-107 in 2003, when he and the crew tragically perished during re-entry. We remember the crew and hold their families in our hearts and prayers as we continue our shared mission of human spaceflight. For me personally, it's a great honor to have followed some of Willie McCool's footsteps as an Eagle Scout, Naval Academy grad, naval aviator and test pilot, and a first spaceflight assignment as a spacecraft pilot. He was an inspiration to me when I was a young naval officer today to be living and working on the ISS with my fellow crewmates while the Cygnus spacecraft Willie McCool was berthed to Node 1 Nadir, our Earth-facing docking port. As we watch the Cygnus depart, know that she performed her critical resupply mission flawlessly, and today we say fair winds and following seas as she heads off to complete her mission. Following naval tradition, we will spacecraft Willie McCool departing.
Thank you for that, Sophie and Jack. We appreciate it. And like you said, it was a job well done.
Great words from the crew, both ESA astronaut Sophie Adano and NASA astronaut Jack Hathaway. You heard several callouts and conversations just recently. Depart burn was completed, and shortly after that departure burn was completed, you heard that Cygnus did exit that keep out sphere. This means that the SS Willie McCool spacecraft has now exited the International Space Station's 200-meter boundary. Here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, flight controllers and mission control are in joint operations working with their counterparts at Northrop Grumman's Control Center in Dulles, Virginia. Earlier this morning, robotics operators here in Mission Control received the go to demate Cygnus, and then they used the Canadarm2 robotic arm to uninstall the spacecraft from its port and guide it away from the space station into its release position. Release was commanded and snares were opened as the spacecraft free flew away from the robotic arm. And the cargo spacecraft was successfully released from the International Space Station's robotic arm at 6:06 a.m. Central, 7:06 a.m. Eastern, as the space station was flying 260 statute miles above the Atlantic. Once released, Cygnus completed a successful departure burn that lasted approximately 6 minutes and 40 seconds, and then it just crossed the 200-meter keep-out sphere. We are now standing by, waiting for it to cross the approach ellipsoid. You are seeing room views here of the International Space Station Flight Control Room as we continue a signal handover between satellites. As mentioned, we are waiting for NG's Northrop the approach ellipsoid. That's essentially a large three-dimensional oval measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers that you see on your screen right now. It's the final boundary putting the spacecraft in its 24-hour free drift trajectory. So while we are under 10 minutes away from the approach ellipsoid exit, once the vehicle crosses it, joint operations will end. So we'll then wrap up coverage, and responsibility of the vehicle is handed back to Northrop Grumman. Following a deorbit engine firing, Cygnus will begin a planned re-entry in which the spacecraft will safely and harmlessly burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. We're under 10 minutes away from the approach ellipsoid exit, and a unique capability with Cygnus is its trash disposal. While the astronauts aboard the International Space Station unloaded the 11,000 pounds that Cygnus delivered back in September, since then the crew has repacked Cygnus again with trash and other unwanted items over the last 175 days. Yesterday, the crew aboard the space station finished packing Cygnus and configured the spacecraft for its release and departure today.
Station Houston on Space to Ground 2 for Sophie.
She's listening on 2.
Hey, we're about to enter a bit of an LOS here, so that no T2 constraint will remain until about 11:42 and an additional 10 minutes after that. We're not quite finished our commanding.
No T2. Do you want me to leave the Lab 1 cam then without the wide attachment on the Monitor 1?
your go with your next activities.
Thank you.
You just heard great callouts there between Capcom and the crew aboard station. We are currently going through a period of loss of signal, so although ground controllers will continue to monitor the approach ellipsoid exit, we are here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. It's Northrop's tradition to name each Cygnus spacecraft after an individual who has made significant contributions to human spaceflight. The NG-23 Cygnus spacecraft is named in honor of NASA astronaut William Willie McCool. McCool was an astronaut and naval aviator who piloted the 2003 Columbia spacecraft and lost his life during the mission. His naval career included over 2,800 flight hours and in 24 aircraft and more than 400 career arrestments. After being selected by NASA to become an astronaut in April 1996, he reported to the Johnson Space Center in August 1996. McCool completed 2 years of training and evaluation and was qualified for flight assessment as a pilot. Willie McCool's spaceflight career reached its pinnacle with his role as pilot of STS-107 aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia. The mission, which launched on January 16, 2003, was dedicated to scientific research, with the crew conducting approximately 80 experiments over a 16-day period. Tragically, the mission ended abruptly on February 1, 2003, when Columbia disintegrated during re-entry, just 16 minutes before the scheduled landing, resulting in the loss of McCool and his fellow crew members.
And Station Houston.
Houston, station on 2 for ARED.
Go ahead. We've got 1 minute before an LOS.
I see it coming. I'll just package it because it's probably an answer that you'll have to check on. Chris did. He put a crew note. He did tighten in order to shorten the rope. He did 2 turns on the tension mechanism knob. However, now the cable arm is popping out again. So during my workout, I went back to cable exercises, but it still wasn't staying in. We're wondering if the enemy might recommend taking one of those turns off. Basically, the rope is now just under 7 inches.
We copy and we'll assess and break. Sophie, if you are still on with us, you can no perform step 2 in your DAC activity.
And while we are continuing to monitor today's operations, that was the voice of NASA astronaut Jessica Meir speaking with Capcom here in the room. While operations are taking place, the crew is continuing to go about their daily routine, which includes exercise. So that was that conversation you heard right there. So going back to Willie McCool, I wanted to also share that in all he had logged 15 days, 22 hours, and 20 minutes in space. And in recognition of his exemplary service and sacrifice, McCool was posthumously awarded the Congressional Space Medal of Honor, the NASA Spaceflight Medal, the NASA Distinguished Service Medal, and the Defense Distinguished Service Medal. Willie McCool's legacy endures through his contributions to aviation and space exploration. So as we continue to stand by for the approach ellipsoid exit, which should be happening any minute now. If you're just joining us, we are providing live departure coverage of Northrop Grumman's 23rd Commercial Resupply Services mission for NASA to the space station. The cargo spacecraft was successfully released from the International Space Station's robotic arm at 6:06 a.m. Central, 7:06 a.m. Eastern. Once released, Cygnus completed a successful departure burn that lasted approximately 6 minutes and 40 seconds. And it then crossed the 200-meter keep-out sphere, and we are now standing by for it to cross the approach ellipsoid. We are currently in joint operations with Northrop Grumman's team in Dulles, Virginia. Once again, just standing by for the call out for approach ellipsoid exit. And we just received confirmation in the room that the SS William McCool has exited the approach ellipsoid. The Cygnus XL spacecraft is now 1,000 meters away from the International Space Station. The vehicle has moved outside the keep-out sphere and outside of the approach ellipsoid, the two major milestones that take the spacecraft outside of the neighborhood of the space station. Joint operations between NASA's International Space Station Flight Control Room and Northrop Grumman's team in Dulles, Virginia have now concluded. Northrop now leads the final phase of the cargo spacecraft's trash disposal, but first Cygnus will be commanded to gradually lower its orbit. It'll execute a series of, descent delta velocity burn Saturday morning, slowing the spacecraft to lower its altitude. And then about 4.5 hours later into Saturday morning, the spacecraft will perform a re-entry burn, once again slowing it down. This two-part braking maneuver will allow the trash-filled receptacle so it can slip out of orbit and safely burn up in Earth's atmosphere around noon Central on Saturday over the Pacific. Following the go to demate Cygnus this morning, the Canada Arm 2 robotic arm uninstalled the spacecraft from its port to guide it away from the space station and into its release position. The SS William Willie McCool was released from the International Space Station this morning at 6:06 a.m. Central, 7:06 a.m. Eastern, as the station was flying 260 statute miles above the South Atlantic. Once released, Cygnus completed a successful departure burn that lasted approximately 6 minutes and 40 seconds. It then crossed the keep-out sphere and approach ellipsoid. With that, joint operations between NASA and Northrop Grumman have been completed. Thank you so much for joining us this morning as we followed along the release and departure of Northrop Grumman's 23rd Cargo Resupply Services mission for NASA to the International Space Station. You can follow all things International Space Station at nasa.gov/station. This is Mission Control Houston.
Roger, go.
We think about the challenges, come up with the technologies, and push the bounds of the science.
4, 3.
The more ways that we can send humans into space, the better it is for our country and for the planet.
Ready to get to work.
What an amazing view.
From the International Space Station.
Wow.
Look at them go.
Spaceflight is a beautiful symbol of humanity.
America has launched.
Reach for these lofty goals, work hard, and look what you can accomplish.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today at the Crew 12 post-launch news conference. I am glad to be joined here today by NASA's Administrator, Jared Isaacman, Professor Daniel Neuenschwander, Director of Human and Robotic Exploration from ESA, Steve Stitch, the Manager of CCP, Dana Weigel, the Manager of the ISS program, and Juliana Scheiman, Director of NASA Science and Dragon Programs at SpaceX. Each of our participants will give brief remarks, and then we will open up the floor to those of you here in the room and those of you calling in via telephone. If you want to get into the queue, please press *1, and out of the queue, *2. So with that, I will hand it over to Administrator Isaacman.
Thanks, Bethany. Good morning, everyone. What a absolutely wonderful start to the day. We saw a remarkable Crew 12 launch, a very impressive F9 return to launch site. I'm sure everybody heard that, all while Artemis 2 sits on the pad in preparation for its historic mission. So following this morning's launch operations, Dragon completed its on-orbit checkouts. Nose cone is open, and the crew are now safely on their way to the International Space Station. Teams throughout the agency, SpaceX, ESA, Roscosmos, and more continue to monitor progress of the mission ahead of its docking. I've said it before, I'll say it again, that this mission has shown in many ways what it means to be mission-focused at NASA. So just to recap, in the last couple of weeks, we brought Crew 11 home early. We pulled forward Crew 12 to the launch date today, all while simultaneously making preparations for the Artemis 2 mission which its next window will open up in early March. That's only possible because of an incredibly talented workforce that we have here at NASA, alongside our contractors and our commercial and international partners. So along this mission, NASA is sending an astronaut into space again for the first time. So I want to congratulate Jack Hathaway. This is what he's trained for, and I know he possesses the qualities found in many accomplished astronauts. This crew will continue critical scientific research in the orbiting laboratory, but they will be making history in many other ways. For example, I think this is very exciting, we will have the first spaceship to space station call between the International Space Station and a lunar mission with Artemis II. Just really think about that, right? It's pretty exciting. I can only imagine what it's going to be like in the years ahead, right? You have multiple space stations that are up there, cruise cargo going to and from the lunar environment, people phoning home from a moon base. It's pretty exciting to think about, and we're taking a nice step in that direction in the mission ahead. In addition, this mission maintains our over 25 years of continuous human presence in low Earth orbit. So the crew, along with the subsequent ones to follow, will absolutely make the most of our International Space Station. We are going to get our highest potential science and research up there with the aim of cracking the...
And thank you all for being here on a really happy morning. I'm proud to say we didn't talk about weather much at all after talking about weather for a whole week. We're blessed with really good launch site weather this morning and really good weather down the ascent track, which we've been monitoring all week, and we finally found the right day to launch on Friday the 13th. I understand this is the first time NASA's ever launched on Friday the 13th, so pretty amazing times. Really appreciate all the hard work between NASA and SpaceX and on Crew 12. It's great to get the launch behind us. Of course, that's the first step. The crew's doing well on orbit. Jessica, Jack, Sophie, and Andre are settling into their kind of off-duty period. They did a phasing burn a little while ago to set up the rendezvous. We'll be docking on Saturday about 3:15 Eastern. There will be another burn late tonight around just before midnight, another phasing burn. You know, we really didn't have too many things to work during the countdown. It was really quiet with Falcon 9 and Dragon. Nothing really off nominal. As Jared said, the spacecraft got on orbit. We checked out the service section Dracos. The forward bulkhead Dracos are firing just fine. All the systems on Dragon are working well, and so we'll just continue to monitor the progress of the vehicle until we get in.
Really looking forward to having the crew on board and having the extra helping hands. This will be the second flight for Jessica and Andre and the first flight for Jack and for Sophie. So really excited to have them on board. Chris is doing great on board along with the two cosmonauts. He's been doing research, cargo packing, and a little bit of tidying up, getting ready for Crew 12's arrival. When Crew 12 gets there, they'll spend a few dedicated days with Chris going through handover. Top of the agenda is going through the emergency response procedures, becoming familiar with the location of the emergency equipment, and then outfitting the Dragon with some of the standard emergency hardware, exercise equipment, those types of things. They've got some critical research they'll be transferring for us in the first couple of days from freezers that we sent up with the Dragon, and then they've got a little bit of initial human research work that they'll be doing. And that's critical overall just for our long-term plans to fly longer and longer duration missions and making sure that we're taking care of astronauts' health as we look forward to Moon and Mars, longer durations. One unique thing we're doing for this handover, you know, normally we've got 4 crew handing over with 4 crew, and since we've got Chris doing a little zone defense with the entire crew, we supplemented and had some onboard videos put together. So some of those were from previous crews, and then Chris made some. So when Crew 12 gets up there, they'll also do some video review. As you heard in the pre-launch briefing, we've got a busy few months in front of us on board Space Station. At the end of this month, we'll be undocking the SpaceX 33 cargo mission. Beginning of March, we will unberth HTV X1. We've got a very brief docking sensor demonstration we'll do with the vehicle, then we'll release it. In mid-March, we're planning to do an EVA to finish installing a modification kit to one of our solar arrays. This is called the 2A array, and that's in preparation for upgraded IROSA rollout arrays that are coming up later in the summer. We've got a second EVA in April to install the other modification kit on our very last array, the 3B array. Towards the end of March, our Roscosmos colleagues are going to launch a Progress cargo resupply vehicle. And then in April, we've got the Northrop Grumman 24 Cygnus mission. So a lot going on, as always, very, very busy on board Space Station. We're really looking forward to having the crew on board. With that, I will pass it over to Daniel.
Okay. Thanks, Dana. Let me start by congratulating everybody for this amazing launch. Everything went really flawlessly, so thanks to the teams at ESA, NASA, SpaceX, and all the partners for their incredible work done. My first thought, of course, is going to the crew, and Sophie in particular. This is just the start of a journey. I know that they are very well prepared, and I'm really excited to see the next steps unfold. Sophie will be the first of her astronaut class to embark on a long-duration mission, and she had an incredible journey. I cannot stress enough how well she has been performing in a very short duration of time. Something unanimously underlined by her trainers is her mindset, which is well reflected in the patch of the mission. On top of Crew 12, on Expedition 74 patches, we also have an ESA patch, because we never get enough of those, of course. The name of her mission is something in France. I also take the opportunity today to reaffirm ESA's commitment to the International Space Station and the peaceful exploration of space. We are here this morning after the launch of 2 Americans, a Russian and a European, as one crew. This is again a testimony of what we can achieve together. The ISS stands as a powerful symbol of humanity. Our meeting this week between NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman and ESA Director General Joseph Aschbacher gave us the opportunity to reaffirm our shared commitment of continuing this remarkable journey. Together, we are already preparing the next chapter, guided by common objectives, increasing the pace of human space flights and creating new opportunities for research and scientific discovery. But low Earth orbit is not our final destination. We also, this night, also SLS on the pad. And I'm confident